Dear sisters, brothers, colleagues, friends, we're coming towards the end. We're not quite finished. I'm now in a situation where we have a saying in Norway, where I come from, that it's like jumping after Wirkola, and none of you understand what that means. But one of our national sports in Norway is ski jumping. Very funny. You know, these now also women, for the first time in the Winter Olympics, they put skis on their feet and they sort of sail down, they jump for 100 meters, 200 meters. Wirkola was a very good ski jumper, and whoever tried to jump after him really wouldn't be the same. So when I'm supposed to jump after Mary, that's sort of the feeling I have. Because you are a giant, Mary, and I said in the opening session here that I didn't come where I am on my own, but there were people who had supported me. And I think I referenced that you once said to me, you said several things to me, but you said, "Go, girl, go." And what you did then was that you gave me the confidence that Lily was talking about on the panel. Because I don't think you said, "Go, girl, girl," because I was a girl. Yes, a little bit. But you wouldn't have said it if you didn't think that I could go. And being able to receive those messages and believe in yourself, and they're just sort of making you a little bit more stronger, they're so important. So one of the outcomes I wish for from this conference is that you all go home and say, "Go, girl, go," to someone. Because yes, we stand on the shoulders of giants that have gone before us, but we have to be the giants for those that come after us and have to stand on our shoulders, and we have to make them capable of standing on our shoulders, and that's what you do when you give them confidence. Because they have to do what Lily also was talking about. She talked about it's not about the structures. I want to turn it a little bit around and say that structures alone can't change anything. Because it is about the people. It's about the people within the structures. And if they choose to use the structures as tools to achieve their goals, then the structures can be helpful. But no structures are better than the people within them. So you can restructure your unions again and again and again. But if the same people are in them with the same goals, they're going to more or less work as they always have. So you have to have both. You have to empower the people, and the people have to believe in their goals, and they have to use their structures as tools to achieve it. When you go home now, most of you, except those of you who live in Ireland, will probably be boarding an airplane. I hope that every one of you, when you're on that airplane or if you're in a car driving home, take a few minutes and reflect. What was the outcome of this conference for me? Because some of these outcomes are on a personal level. It's not all about EI. It's about each and every one of you. You're privileged, you have a privilege to be here, but it's also an obligation. This is when I turn into a teacher. You have an obligation to go home and do something with what you have experienced. You can keep what you've had experienced as an individual, but you represent your union. So you have to go home and ask yourself, what do we want to do at national level? How do we want to keep on working? Take it home to your union. You have to create the outcomes at national level. And we have our chief regional coordinators here. They have to go home in dialogue with the national affiliates and figure out what are the outcomes at regional level. What does this mean for our work in our region within Education International? And then I have to go home, and Susan has to go home, and Shazada has to go home, and Irene has to go home, Charlie has to go home, Fred has already left, but he's going to be told what happened after he left. And we're going to have to figure out what does EI have to do together with all the other executive board members and the secretariat. There's no way I can tell you all the outcomes and recommendations you have given us. We have all kinds of written documentation. We are going to put together a written report. We are going to discuss and figure out how we're going to move on. The Status of Women's Committee will discuss it before the next Executive Board meeting. And the Status of Women's Committee consists of all the women who serve on the Executive Board. And they're chaired by Shuzara, who you saw chairing earlier under this conference. They will discuss how do we want to use this politically. And then the Executive Board will discuss. And they will determine, do we need to change our policies? Do we need new policies? If they decide that, they may put resolutions forward before the World Congress. That's what happened after the last World Women's Conference. But these are some of the recommendations that keep repeating themselves from your reports. So it's just a teaser. One of them was increase mapping and monitoring of women's participation in unions across all EI regions. We've done some of that in our quadrennial surveys before the World Congresses. But we're rethinking, can we make this even better? Can we do mapping more often? Can we do it through a regional level? Because we need response rates, and that's sometimes difficult because you have so much to do. So we want to find new ways. Martin Dermer told me that in Europe, he didn't have time to reference it. They have mapped, and they have found that the number of female presidents in the affiliates in Europe has gone up from 30% to 40% from 2009. That's great. We need that information. The gender balance among general secretaries hasn't changed. So perhaps that tells them something, where they have to target their efforts. Increase opportunities for exchange between the different DI women networks. We've heard a lot about networks and the importance of them. I think we have to start the dialogue, yes, that we can use, but let's together find ways to make that happen. Increase the number of women with voting rights at the EI Congress by 50%. Yes, dear sisters, but let me tell you, we cannot do that from Brussels. It's the national affiliates, the national organizations who make the decision of who goes to the World Congress in Ottawa. You have to go home and figure out who's going to represent us at that World Congress. Perhaps you have to put yourself forward and say, I want to go. Don't just say, I want to go. I want to go because you can contribute something, because you are important. Or perhaps you're going home and saying to someone, go girl, girl, I want you to go to the World Congress. It's also about supporting, it's not just about me. So you have to go home and figure out your strategy there. Increased number of young women participating in EI activities. There's been a lot of support for that here. We are proud that we had a goal of 30% under 35s at this conference. We didn't completely get it because we're also dependent on affiliates there. You decide who you register. So you have to find ways, how can we get our young elected officials to participate? But we also have something we call OrgNet, the Organizers Network in Education International, and I'm very happy to say that they have stated that they want to work on how we can organize young members and also get them to participate in union work. So we started and we will continue. Now, education, the second day. One of the things that has been referenced several times is Education International's Declaration on Professional Ethics. I've gone back and I've read it again. I've read it many times, but I read it again the other evening after it was referenced. I actually think it still is a very good declaration. We will go home and look at it carefully, but in my mind, standing here, the main thing is not to revise it, but to vitalize it. And to, again, look at it through a gender lens and see how it can support national affiliates. Because professional ethics, in my mind, they have to be developed on the ground. You have to have a bottom-up process, so you develop professional ethics that the teaching profession believe in and own and are their own. But the declaration from EI is a very good starting point, a very good framework for you to work on. We're going to go back and see, can we develop support material from a gender perspective so that we can use it, for example, to promote inclusion, and it especially has been mentioned here on LGBT issues related to students and teachers, and also in the aspect of safe schools. Monitor and evaluate the EI Gender Equality Action Plan, which we call GEAP. There have been some very good suggestions here on how it can be even better. So far, the recommendations we have seen do not indicate that we should revise it, because I would say, unfortunately, the 3 priority areas, we're not going to reach them in 4 years. We have to keep working and keep working. But that doesn't mean that we don't revise some of the actions, that we make sure that our language is inclusive, we make sure that it's relevant for all our membership. So we will go back and look at it. And the third point, that all EI campaigns should have gender issues at the front and centre and should contribute towards the implementation of the Gender Equality Action Plan. Yes, we are trying. We will try even harder to make sure that we always do that, and we always need someone to remind us. And if you see that we're not doing it, please tell us, because we always need the reminders. I have one little outcome here that I hope will be an outcome of the Congress. It's not really related to education, it's not related to trade unions, but it's related to the modern world. We started out with the former president of Finland. I here have a device made in Finland. It says Nokia, and I hope that whoever has lost this telephone, come and claim it, because you need it in the modern world. It's at my table. If no one claims it, it will go to the reception. That was all I planned to say about the outcomes of this conference now. And I want to give the floor then to another giant, because Susan Hopgood, our president, is a giant. I'm very proud that we have Susan as President of Education International. I'm just as impressed every time she chairs an executive board meeting, the way she manages to get everyone to come together, to see the connections, to see the differences in opinions, and she always gets the meetings finished on time too. It's amazing, and I'm always so proud when I'm allowed to sit and listen to her speak, because she gives me so much food for thought. So Susan, now you have the opportunity to give all these women and men some food for thought before they go to lunch.